I pushed a new update for WorldKit that has some fixes for the viewport rendering, some updates to biomes, and some changes to how coastlines work. I also committed a tool that I use locally to sometimes generate landform outlines. So if you create a new run config for this test fractal coasts and give it a working directory where it can output some images, use the main GC class path. You can use this as sort of an alternate starting point to the landforms generated by WorldKit. It just provides little different settings, and it has a tendency to produce some smaller islands around larger bodies. So there's a couple different algorithms in here. I haven't parameterized any of it, so you'll need to play around with the settings in this file directly before running it, and you can test out getting different shapes. So if you click run, it should spit out in the default settings here about 1,000 different shapes that you can look through, and here's some examples of what it can produce. So you can find something you like here, and you could load these directly into WorldKit. They're set up to work fine as a region file, or you can pick something you like as a starting point and then pop it into Photoshop to do some extra work on it. I have a process that I like to use for playing around with these coastal outlines in Photoshop, and I'm not going to go into detail on the process. It uses a cloud brush and some filters to make it easy to paint landscape looking shapes. I will post a link to a video that explains how this is done in the description. So you can play around with this as much as you want, and the WorldKit will actually support multiple colors in here and import each color as a separate region. But I often just stick with one color and import as a single region, and then I place my ridge lines and rivers by hand. So this was this was not great, but just a quick example of how you could go about doing this. And so eventually you're going to want to flatten it all down to a single layer, two colors, and you'll need to apply some levels to it so that you can get rid of all the mid pixels, as each different color will be interpreted by WorldKit as a different region. So if you use levels to just squash it down to two colors, it'll import nicely as black for water and white for land. So I open up WorldKit here, and I'm going to do create a new project and then browse to where I saved that file that I edited in Photoshop. You can just drag that into the region file slot in WorldKit, or you can click that select file button and then browse for it that way. Turn the region file on and generate, and there you go. You have a coastal outline in WorldKit that you can paint and shape however you want in Photoshop. Need to generate some biomes in order to have something to build the mesh from. I'm just randomly selecting stuff here, nothing fancy, but if I was doing it for real, I would paint those probably also in Photoshop and bring them in as well. So here I'm going to take a look at some of the new rendering. There was some kind of glaring issues with the shaders that were in here previously. I'd basically misunderstood a couple things that I read in the paper that I read about the PBR shading. So someone released another paper that explained some of that stuff a bit better, and I went back and fixed up those issues. So now things should look a lot cleaner. There shouldn't be weird artifacts in the ambient occlusion and specular and things like that. It doesn't really change much about the workflow or the end results that it produces, but it does make it nicer to look at and just easier to visualize things in the editor. In my workflow, I normally use WorldKit as a base just for blocking out the terrain and getting the basic shapes ready. But then I take it into other programs like Gaia usually, also World Machine and World Creator, depending on what features I want to use. All those tools have nice features that the other ones don't. So, but a couple of things in WorldKit were playing havoc with the way the terrain was working with those other tools. There was a little ridge being created along the beach, which was causing problems with coastal erosion. And some of the terrain amplification was just causing problems because it was breaking the coherent hydrology that's sort of works as a base for erosion in those other tools. So I wanted to get better looking results without applying amplification. So I took it to a higher level simulation. What I'm looking at here is running in the high memory experimental version. So this probably won't run on all machines because I think it's using about 50 gigs of RAM. But I did commit also a lower memory version of it that isn't quite as precise, but still works nicely bringing into World Machine or Gaia. And other thing you'll notice is that the map detail scale is now in real world units. It's using kilometers because I was finding it difficult to work with the scale that I had in there, and it made it easier to play with other tools if everything is using real units. One thing that someone asked about in a different thread is how to create little islands around larger islands. So that's why I showed the tool for that at the beginning. But I just wanted to show here that you can also use these landforms generated by WorldKit as a starting base and export that into Photoshop and then bring it back into WorldKit, just like I did with the other tool. So if you go to the export settings here and you export the land mask, you can choose a place to save it and then choose a resolution for it and just click export. Oops, and I should probably mention that it's going to export at the current quality settings, and the high quality that I had it at is going to take a long time, so I just reduce the quality down to 1 and export again, since quality isn't important with this land mask. So I'm just going to go find the file that I just exported. I think I put it in my WorldKit projects and pop that open in Photoshop. And then I'm just going to use the same process I used before and paint on it using the cloud brush. So I'll put the link for how to do that thing with the cloud brush in the description for anyone who's interested. You can really use whatever process you want for this. You don't have to use a cloud brush. You could just paint in here freehand if that's what you prefer. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.